More and more cities are taking steps to remove Confederate memorials from public spaces. In Virginia, Governor Terry McAuliffe has called on all cities to remove their monuments and move them. This map from the New York Times shows 12 cities have already done so, while at least 13 other cities have introduced proposals to do so. Senator Cory Booker also says he plans to introduce legislation to have Confederate memorials removed from the halls of Congress. The last attempt to have them removed by the Black Caucus in the wake of the Charleston church massacre ended without success. Meanwhile, there is a battle brewing in Alabama. The state's attorney general is now suing the city of Birmingham for covering a downtown Confederate monument with plywood. The city covered the memorial temporarily after the violence in Charlottesville, but according to the attorney general, the move violates a state law aimed at preserving historic structures. Joining us now from Baltimore, Mayor Catherine Pugh, who ordered the removal of 4 Confederate statues in her city and watched overnight on Wednesday as crews took them down. Thank you very much, Mayor, for being on the show this morning. Tell us what went behind the decision. Did you have a lot of pushback, any pushback, and why did you have them brought down at night?
Well, it's hard to get pushback at 11:30 p.m. at night, but the decision, watching Charlottesville, what I didn't want to see happen in Baltimore was that same kind of protest, and certainly not the loss of life. And so I've begun talking with contractors earlier about helping us to remove those monuments, and we had already planned that we would do it late at night so we would avoid traffic, avoid protests, avoid crowds. And so I just thought it was the right way to do it. No pomp and circumstances, just get the work done.
And to explain why it was important to do this, especially in Baltimore. Some see these as symbols of history. Right or wrong, difficult or not, but why take them down?
Well, I agree with you that some people see them as symbols of history, but at the same time, at this particular point in time in our history, there's just too much protest, and I think what we have to begin to do in this nation is to heal and to show that we love and respect each other. I mean, these are salutes to the Confederacy. This is the United States of America, and we ought to be united in purpose and causes, and we ought to be moving our country forward. I'm very focused on how we move Baltimore forward. A city that has had many problems over the years, but a city that is also healing because we have so many great things in front of us. And I think about the fact that we're in the middle of, almost at the end of getting our consent decree monitor hired, having gone through so many trials and tribulations. But we're also a city that has some great communities focusing on how we rebuild neighborhoods that have been neglected for decades. And so I just felt that it was the right thing to do. No more speeches, no more pomp and circumstances. And I always say to folks, if you need to hear a great speech about why these monuments should be removed, then listen to Mayor Landrieu's speech in New Orleans.
Mayor Pugh, Gene Robinson. Baltimore, of course, is also home to the original Washington Monument, the one built before the one in Washington, D.C. But was there much pushback at all, or, I mean, obviously not overnight in the wee hours, but what was the discussion like before removing the monuments?
Well, we had a study done, the previous administration had a study done regarding the removals of the monuments, and there was a process laid out in terms of what needed to take place. And so I just felt when I came in as the mayor, I was confronted with a number of things, whether it was a consent decree, school system issues, and then charting out our course. I mean, we had laid out a course for moving the city, to continue to move the city forward. And so there wasn't a lot of discussion around it at that particular point in time. There was a resolution by the City Council, I believe it was on Monday, but our discussions had already begun in June. And I spoke very bluntly and very with the other members of the city about what I thought we needed to do. And then I had a conversation with the president of the City Council and I told him very clearly, and he agreed that we should continue to move quietly and quickly, and that's what we did.
Mayor Pugh, the Civil War ended in 1865. 100 years later, in August of 1965, Lyndon Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act in America. 100 years. And the statues now are coming down in specific cities, Baltimore, Charlottesville. But it strikes me, and I'm wondering if it strikes you, that it's an amazing indictment of how we do not teach American history, what really happened in this country, to grammar school students, high school students, college students, and American adults. We don't teach our own history.
Well, you know, you hear that constantly, you know, that the history books throughout this nation don't really reveal all that has taken place in our nation and has taken place in our nation. And I remember during the campaign, a young man walking up to me at one of the debates and saying to the panel, what is it we need to do to bring back the fervor in African Americans specifically, and what are we not telling folks? And what he was really referring to, because we were a little perplexed by his comments, but what I said to him was that I think that if we realized that we were born of kings and queens, that we didn't come to this country on our own in many cases, but that we are here. We are part of this American fabric. We helped to build this nation. We helped to build this country. Even when we weren't allowed to go to integrated churches, we created our own. When we didn't go to colleges and universities, we created our own schools the same way. But this is supposed to be the United States of America. The Statue of Liberty says, bring me, you're hungry, you're tired, you're poor. And to me, that means be welcoming to all citizens, and that we should work together to build each other up. Because if you lift the least, you lift all of us, and that's what we should be focusing on. Equality, inclusiveness, moving cities forward, moving states forward, and moving this country forward.
Mayor Catherine Pugh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.